Hey everyone, here's a video to help you prepare for and take or retake the Unit 7 Quiz 2. This is going to be a pretty major assessment for this quarter, so I want to make sure you guys are well prepared. You have some equations with just an x squared in them. Let me give you an example. X squared equals 25. And that means something times itself is 25. So to find that is taking the square root. And when you take the square root of 25, you get 5. And that makes sense. 5 times 5 is 25. But notice also that negative 5 times negative 5 is also 25. So when you have something like this, x squared equals 25, you take the square root, and you take the square root, but you add a little plus and minus. So here, when we're done, our answer is going to be x equals plus and minus 5. And that's another way of writing x equals 5 comma negative 5. Both of those mean the same thing. Let's do another one. What if we had x squared equals 29? We'll take the square root, but it's a plus minus. In this case, the square root of 29 isn't like a nice number, nice fraction or decimal. And so we're just going to leave our answer as plus minus the square root of 29. Now, what if the x squared isn't alone? What if it's 2x squared plus 1 is equal to 51? Well, the goal as always is to get x by itself. So we're going to isolate just x squared. Let's get x squared by itself. And to do that, we're going to get rid of this from both sides. And now we got 2x squared equals 50. We're closer. Let's get rid of that 2. Divide by 2, divide by 2. And now we have x squared equals 25. And then we take the square root and take the square root, and it's a plus and minus. And so your answer at the end is x equals plus and minus 5. Okay, so that's how you solve questions if there is a squared in them. And on the assignment that I handed you, that's the first box. It's just an x squared. Now, what would happen if instead of just an x squared, you had something else? Like, for example, what if it was x squared minus 6x plus 8? Now, in this case, you cannot isolate just an x squared. You have an x squared and an x, and it's hard to get just a single x by itself. So if you ever have an x squared and an x, the way you solve these is by factoring. So when we factor these, we're saying what are the numbers that multiply to be 8 that also add up to be negative 6? So looking through the list, 1 and 8, 2 and 4, negative 1 and negative 8. Remember, a negative times a negative makes a positive, and also negative 2 times negative 4. And the one that I'm really happy about is negative 2 and negative 4, because negative 2 and negative 4 give me negative 6. And when I multiply them, they give me the 8. So this is how you factor it. Now, factoring is the hard part. The last thing you got to do is you flip those signs around. X is equal to 2 and 4. Now, why does x have to be 2? Why is it the opposite? Well, again, what you're solving for is the value of x that makes the equation true. Now, when x is 2, then that makes the equation true. The equation is equal to 0, and when x is 2, 2 minus 2 is 0. So 2 makes the 0 happen. Same thing with 4. If I put the 4 right there, if I place it into that spot, then 4 minus 4 gives me the 0. Okay, so remember, flip the signs at the end. So factor and flip the signs. All right, let's do this. What if it's x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 1? Now we're on to the third box in your worksheet. Now, this case, before we factor it, you have to make it equal to 0. So make it equal to 0. That's the most important thing. Okay, so make it equal to 0. We're going to subtract 1, and that's going to give you x squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0. And you notice this is the question we just barely did. X minus 4, x minus 2, and your solutions are going to be 4 and 2. Okay, what if you had something like this? What if you had x squared equals 9x plus 22? You got to make it equal to 0, so let's subtract a 9x, and let's subtract a 22. Okay, now none of these mix together, so I'm just going to write them all out in a list. We got x squared, that's that one. We have negative 9x, which is this one, and you have negative 22, that's this one. And on the other side of the equals, well, the 9x and that cancel out, the 22 cancel out, and that's the 0 that you want. Okay, now once it's there, you can factor this. Numbers that multiply to be 22, add to be negative 9. Try to do something with 11 and 2. Play around with those signs and see what you come up with. Okay. Now, sometimes you have something that just won't factor. For example, x squared minus 6x plus 1 equals 0. So this doesn't factor, so we have to use the quadratic formula. And a little review, we've got a equals, b equals, c equals. A equals 1, b equals negative 6, and c equals 1. And now what I would recommend you do on your paper is you draw this template, negative placeholder plus or minus the square root of placeholder squared minus 4 placeholder all over 2 times placeholder. So pause the video for a sec, and I would draw this in on your paper. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to sketch that in. Now let's go fill in these numbers. The quadratic formula, you have this in your notes. The quadratic equation is negative b, so negative 6, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all over 2a. Now we're going to start cleaning up some things. Instead of writing negative 6, we can write that as simply 6. Now the plus and minus has to come down. The square root symbol has to come down. We haven't gotten rid of that. But now instead of writing negative 6 squared, we can replace that with 36. And the minus comes down. And instead of writing 4 times 1 times 1, 4 times 1 times 1 is the same thing as 4. Now the dividing line is still there. And on the bottom, instead of writing 2 times 1, we can replace that with 2. So we just did a lot of simplifications. Let's do another little thing we can do. 6 is going to stay the same, plus and minus stays the same, but 36 minus 4 is 32 over 2. Now, taking the square root of 32 gives you a weird decimal, and because of that, it's probably simplest to just leave it like this, and you're done. Okay, go ahead and give the second one a try, and then on your notes, and let's talk about it. Okay, so the second one, you have 2x squared plus x minus 3 equals 0. And for this one, we're going to do the quadratic equation as negative b, negative 1, plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And that's going to become negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1. Now this negative right here, that negative and that negative turn into a positive. 4 times 2 is 8. That's going to be 24 all over 4. Okay, cleaning that up. Negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 25. Now the square root of 25, we can actually take the square root of 25. The square root of 25 is 5. And now at this point, we're going to break it into 2 different branches. This is going to become negative 1 plus 5 over 4. And this other branch is going to become negative 1 minus 5 over 4. And we can clean those up even more. That's going to be the same thing as 1, just regular old 1, right? Because 5 minus 1 is 4, 4 over 4 is 1. And this right here is going to be negative 6/4, which is probably better to write as negative 3/2. So your answers are positive 1 and negative 3/2. Okay, let's go into the bottom ones. The bottom ones are really easy. Bottom ones, you have x squared minus 6x equals 0. And the key for these ones is to factor. Now, factoring is going to look a little bit different than other factoring because this one doesn't have a constant term. So this one, all you do is you take out a GCF. and your answers are 0 and 6. Okay? If it was, let me just help you explain that. If it was like x squared minus 6x plus 9, then this is that kind of factoring, where you do x minus 3, x minus 3. You have to kind of find the numbers that multiply to be 9 and add to be negative 6. But if it's just x squared minus 6x, then it's even easier. You just take out a common factor. And now you know your solutions have to be 0 and 6. Okay, that's it. Good luck, guys.